Hey, Lisa here, and we are so excited that you have joined us. Here's where we're at, just in case you're keeping track there at home. We have been diligently bringing you tons of ideas on how you can be most effective and productive. And we are in the middle of our How to Do That by Delegating series in the moment. So we've already talked about who you should delegate to, we've already talked about what you should delegate. And now we are starting how. How can you delegate? But first, who are we? So I'm Lisa Curley Malice, owner of Impactive Strategies, and I help business owners figure out how to take control of their time so that they can do more of what they love and get a lot less time in getting all the other stuff done.
And I am Laura LaCursi, owner of Elite Virtual Assistants, and we help busy professionals, attorneys, and business owners go from being busy to productive with our virtual assistant services. And then I also help virtual assistants. I just support them with resources, free trainings, and also help them build their businesses. So, what we've been talking about here, like Lisa said, is the whole delegating piece. And I'm just going to recap real quick because we mentioned this last week, but I think it's something that I just need to bring up again. And it's that a lot of people don't delegate, and they necessarily don't know what to delegate and how to delegate. Or they don't want to, right? Because a lot of times we think it's so much easier to do it ourselves. It's faster, it's easier than it is to show somebody how to do it. But remember, there's only 168 hours in a week, and you can't do everything, especially if you are always trying to get to that next level. You cannot do it all yourself.
Absolutely. And now is the perfect time to be thinking about delegating. We are building habits today that are going to stay with us, whether they're good habits or they're bad habits. And so now is the time to really think through, okay, wait a minute. I know my zone of genius. And if you're wondering what zone of genius is, go back 2 weeks. We have a whole episode on zone of genius. But if you know what that is, and why wouldn't you want to do the stuff you love all the time and then not have to worry about the rest? However, people will say, and I'm sure you've heard this, Laura, not only I can do it better, I can do it quicker myself. I can do it better myself. And my favorite is they bring it to me and it's wrong. And I have to redo it at the last minute anyway. Like, that's totally my favorite because it comes back to that. No one can do it as good as I can. So that's not true. In case anyone's wondering, delegating is a skill. And as any skill, it takes practice. It takes knowing the steps. I don't know that anyone was born a master delegator. You learn along the way. Sometimes you learn by messing it up. Sometimes you learn by doing it right. And sometimes you learn because people give you the strategies and the steps and you can just follow them. So good news for you. Today and next week, and potentially the week after that, we are going to go through the steps. There are 8 steps to be able to delegate effectively. And we're going to do the first 3 of them today. So step number 1, choose the best person to delegate to. I know it seems really common sense. And so I'm going to spoil it for you right now. All 8 steps are going to seem common sense. The problem is you don't do them or do them consistently. So choose the right person to delegate to. It could honestly be the one person who's available. Like, sometimes the best person is the person who answers the phone when you call. But if we were to pull that back a little bit more, what we want to think about is like, maybe it's a skill set thing, or maybe they have, when we're talking available, maybe they have the time allotted. So I'm thinking about one of my clients. The executive director of this nonprofit had this big project, and she wanted to move it forward. And she kept putting it off. And she wasn't putting it off because it wasn't important. She was putting it off because she just couldn't find the capacity to get it started. So finally, after a very pointed conversation, she realized that left to her, it was never going to get done. And so she thought, okay, who on my staff could potentially at least get it started to where I could jump back in later? And she just looked across the group. She didn't know who to pick. because she recognized they were already very, very busy and giving them more work would not be helpful. These were the stories she told herself. They were at a staff meeting. She just said, hey, here's this project. Who has an interest? And there was someone on her staff who said, I really, really want to do this. And what she comes to find out later is that person was actually looking for another job because they were bored and they weren't feeling like their skills were being used. And so they were looking to leave. And this project tapped into pieces of them and skills that they had that really, really like hit them much more than professional development. Like it hit them on a personal level, and they stayed and they are happy as can be. And, as a bonus, the project actually was completed. So when you're looking at best person, it could be a lot of things. Like when you look at it, Laura, when you're matching up clients with VAs, what are some of the things you look at when you think of best person?
So when we look at best, there's quite a few things that we look at. Obviously, the first one is skill set, because sometimes it's important and sometimes it's not. It really just depends on what that project is or what that task is. And so, I like to think of it as if it's more of a tech-based thing. Let's say it's website driven. Is it something that a professional needs to do? So are you looking at either creating a website from scratch that is going to be complicated, let's say, is it going to need all of these integrations and funnels and, it's going to be an e-commerce site or something like that, right? That's something you probably want to leave to a professional. But if it is something that is just website updates, or your website is really just kind of an informational piece where you house your information, maybe, the web isn't really the way that you typically would do business. Find a creative person on your staff then that is willing, like you said, like in that case, somebody who is willing to step up and go, I've always wanted to do that. I would love to try to figure that out, or I would love to help out with this. And then the other thing to think about with that too, though, is how time sensitive is it? Do you have time for somebody to learn it, or is it something that, no, I actually need this done right now. I don't have time for you to do that, right? Because that makes a difference. Actually during this whole COVID thing, we did have a lot of people come to us to do those simple website updates, just to put what their response was that week or what was happening in their business that week. And they didn't have anybody that could just jump in and do it quickly. And that's not something that, you really could take a couple weeks to figure out. They needed to get that message out right away. So I think there's, a couple things that you need to think about with that. And then like we talked about last week too, in addition to skill set, depending on what you're looking for, it's the personality piece. If it's somebody that's not on your current team or that's not currently working with you, is this person a good personality fit for your team, for you? You've got to think about the culture that you have, because if it's going to be a long-term position, you want to make sure that that's all going to mesh together, so that you're not always out there, trying to find somebody else to do that. So those are, when we look at that, those are the two really big things that we look at is the skill set. Is it necessary? What's the big scope of the job? And then, personality wise, how are they gonna work together, fit together? We actually do use the DISC assessment, just to see, this is the trait of our virtual assistant. And a lot of times, obviously on our end, we need to be that, supportive. We need to be, take that role on. So.
Right. Oh, I didn't know you used DISC when you.
We've used a couple. Yeah, we used one called iPersona, which was really good too. And it's just a completely different way. But I do like the DISC assessment because it just kind of tells you what your traits are, as far as, am I more supportive? Am I like a visionary person? What is it?
Yeah. Oh, I love DISC.
I know you do. I knew you'd like that.
Yes. I love this so much. And in case you're wondering, I'm learning as we go from Laura always. So now we're going to jump into step number 2. And if you are the type of person like I am, and you're like, I don't want to get 3 steps this week and 3 more next week, whatever. If you want all 8, scrolling across the bottom of your screen is a bit.ly link. Just click there. Spoiler alert, all 8 are listed right there. But we're going to jump into step number 2, which is determine the appropriate level of delegation. So Laura alluded to this a little bit around skill set. Like, are you delegating a task? Or are you delegating an outcome? Like, are you saying, here are the results I want? So I want to give you a really quick story about this, and I'll use myself as an example. So there are 6 levels of delegation. Knowing what they are, it's not important. You're never going to walk up to someone and say, I'm delegating to you at a level 4. Like, that is not ever going to happen. But what will happen is you need to have a clear view, and they need to have a clear view on where you are. So level 1 is pretty much go do this one thing, come back to me, let me know how it went, and then I'll give you one more thing to go do back and forth. All the way up to level 6, which is, here's broadly what I want to have accomplished. I trust you completely, take it and run. So you can see where if one person is at one level and the other person is thinking they're at the other level, like, is a disaster. So I was on a board, my first time on a board, and I had the role of vice president, which pretty much meant I didn't have any job responsibilities. And I just kind of hung out waiting for someone to tell me what to do. So we had a conversation about surveying our members before our strategic planning meeting. And we talked about it at a couple board meetings. It didn't really move forward. And so I said, well, I'll do it. So away I went. I made up the survey questions. I put them in SurveyMonkey. I sent them out. They came back. I compiled the results. I, all like went to our strategic planning meeting thinking that I was the best thing since sliced bread. Like, I was like, look at me, I did this great thing. Well, the person who said, yeah, go do this, was not thinking level 6 delegation. They were thinking a little bit lower. And so their version of success was really more of come up with some ideas, let me know what you're thinking of surveying people. Once you get that out, come back. Let's talk about the results together. Let's decide how to compile them, and let's move forward. So I come in thinking I'm the best thing ever. This person is thinking,
you are.
I'm awful. Like, she was so upset. And it's not that I was right and she was wrong or vice versa. It was just that she had one expectation, and I didn't communicate with her, letting her know I was doing it. Like, she probably thought it wasn't even happening. And I was like, well, you said do it. So of course I took it to the end. So the point of that story is, yes, I am the best thing since sliced bread. However, you want to be on the same page. If you're delegating for an outcome, which is always preferable, if you're delegating to an outcome, make sure they know that that you're delegating to an outcome. If you're delegating a task, make sure they know that you're delegating them at a task level. Your goal is always to delegate to them the highest level you can, where they have the skill set and the comfort to be able to do it. So some people are never going to be able to be delegated to at a level 6. It just isn't who they are. Some people can on certain areas and can't in other areas because of comfort or confidence or skill set. You just need to be able to figure out where you are and then make sure you're both on the same page.
Yeah. And to that, I think a lot of that too, you can grow with it, like, because you're right. I think of that, and I think of somebody who's a task doer, like you said, maybe level 1, they are, and they don't really graduate from there, but maybe they're never given the opportunity to. Mm-hmm. So, and I know a lot of people who are those like list checkers, they're not necessarily that forward thinking person, or maybe they're not really a proactive person. And I think that a lot of times that, you need to think about that as well when you're bringing somebody in. Like, do you want somebody who is, we all want somebody who's thinking a couple steps ahead of us, and not everybody's like that. So, and if that's what you want, like you said, it goes back to communication, which we talked about, in the past couple weeks, because communication is so utterly important. And like your example was perfect, they were delegating at like a level 1, and you took it all the way. You took it home. So, I think being able to, keep those lines of communication wide open, through that is ideal. And just the other thing, just to kind of add to that is, and this probably goes more along with like level 6, but letting them know ahead of time how much decision-making power they're actually going to have, because if they don't know that they can make decisions, they're not going to. So, and you might be the opposite of your story, where then they're expecting that. Like, for example, when we brought on like our customer relations team, my big message to them was, I want our customers to be happy and cared for and know that they are like the most important thing to us. And however you want that to happen and how that looks like, I'm going to let you do that. These are some of the things that we do, but this is the outcome that I want. I want them to feel like they are so loved, right? And, if you look at even Costco, I don't know if you go to Costco, but that place in my eyes can basically, bless you, can do no wrong, because they put it in the power of the people who are working at that return desk or that are working at the lines. You can take anything back to Costco. You're not sitting there waiting for a manager to come and approve something. You're not happy, you take it back, you get your refund, boom. Like, that's customer service, but that is also what they did. They delegated, you make our customers feel like they are so important to us. If they're not happy, we'll make it right. So
absolutely. I think the same thing with Kohl's.
Yes, Kohl's is the same way. It's not Nordstrom. It's the same.
Right. Yeah. And I think of when I share with my VAs, and if I haven't mentioned it before, they come from Laura's company and they are amazing. Here's what we live by. Make it easy. Make it easy for the client, make it easy for the potential client, make it easy for whomever, and show you care. Yeah. Like, those are our guiding principles. Show you care, make it easy. So our third step for you today is meet with the individual, make the assignment, state the desired result. So part of this goes back to that level 6 thing. What is the end result that you need them to be? Even if you're delegating task by task, be really clear about that end result. What I love about this step is meet with the person. Meet. Notice I did not say text. I did not say use Slack. Meet. Whether it's in person or it's on Zoom or a platform similar, or even worst case, it's on the phone. But do not delegate by email or text message. And I don't want to say do not do it ever. Like, at some point you will come into a relationship with someone that you can do that, but definitely not at the beginning. So one of my clients is Indeed.com, and they are all the time on Slack and things like that. But one of the major shifts that this team made was that they delegate by video conference. They no longer delegate through Slack. There's so much to be said about having a conversation about what the desired result looks like, and then having the person be able to ask a question back. There's so much fewer miscommunication.
Oh yeah, for sure. We have an onboarding process with our, clients, and that is the biggest thing. We do a video onboarding call, and I always make them set a day and a time every week that they are going to be able to meet, so that they can do some type of video call. Or even if you can't do a video call, sometimes it's got to be a phone call. Like, you've got to be talking, because there is too much that's lost in that, email and texting. It's just, there's too much that can be lost and misread and buried in there. And that's why I like the video so much, because even though you might not physically be in the room, you can still see their facial expression. If they look lost, they're lost. Like, we need to clear that up, right? Because they might not say it over the phone even. So yeah, I'm a big proponent of that. And a lot of it just goes back to something that one of my old high school teachers used to say is, don't be vague. Vague is unclear and unclear is wrong. He used to say it all the time. And I'll tell you what, that has just been ingrained in my brain forever. So I think that's another really big part to, is just being clear and specific on those expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are the first 3 out of 8. Again, if you can't wait until next week when we do get the next ones, just the link is scrolling across the bottom. Go to the bit.ly link and pull those up. We'd like to end our time together with some success stories. And so, Laura, do you have something to share, a bright spot to share?
Yes. So, and this is one of our current clients who actually is an attorney. And so she's been using us for more of like the legal, assistant side of things. And she has noticed, first of all, she's out in California. So her commute time, because she's home now working, has been cut drastically, right? So she's found herself with quite a bit of extra time. And she knows that right now is when she needs to start making herself visible. She has actually talked to us many times about wanting to do Facebook ads and just hasn't, because it still takes some time on your part, right? To really dig in, work with like our strategist and come up with this plan. And so she's got the time to do it now. And because she is positioning herself to come out on that other end, working her way through this. But think about right now, everybody's home. People are getting bored and everyone's on their phone. Like social media right now is just blowing up. And so if you want to take advantage, and I don't mean take advantage of the situation, but take this opportunity to get in and, while you've got the eyes on you, right? While you have the audience and you can show people how you can help. I think that's a big thing too, is when we're in this type of situation, we don't want to be selling ourselves, obviously, because we're trying to be, obviously compassionate and caring and, just wanting to be there to support people. But the reality of it is your service is benefiting somebody, right? Somebody needs you out there, or they will need you down the road. So take this opportunity to get yourself out there. And if, even this is something that you want to do and you have time to do it, then experiment with it, try it, play with it. If you're just thinking about going on social media and maybe, you haven't really done it for your business or, whatever it is, now is the time to play with it if you've got the time, or, start seeking out a little bit of help or support or even some free resources right now, but to really, get you going. Because that was a big move for her, because she had been wanting to do it, didn't have the time, to really invest in it. And now she is, and, she's pretty happy. So.
Yeah. And what's funny is, Laura and I don't share our stories coming in about what our success stories are. So mine today is also about a lawyer. One of my clients has a staff and about 10 people, and they've always been in an office space with, they all have their own offices and things like that. And she's often talked about different ways to reduce expenses and never really approached the whole, do we need an office space conversation? Part of it is when you're in it day to day, you're in it day to day, and it's hard to pull yourself back and really think. And this has allowed her the time to explore. And what she realized is that pretty much her whole staff can work effectively from home. And she doesn't need a suite of offices. She just needs one office to meet with clients when they need to come in to meet. Right now, they're all working from home. The population that she serves is a high-risk population, and so they're not coming in. So they figured out that they can pretty much do almost everything by video conference. And so,
I've heard so much of that.
Right?
I've heard that a lot. Like, I actually start to wonder what impact this is going to have on these commercial properties like that, these office, spaces, because I've heard that from so many people.
Mm-hmm. Like, it turns out she can definitely downsize when her lease is up. That's one of the things she's looking at doing. And again, before all of this happened, it really, I would think, probably wasn't even on like the top 5 things she was looking at to reduce expenses. And then once it happened, she's like, "Ooh, wait, I can."
Mm-hmm.
So she isn't finding so much that she has the extra time available as your client is to do new stuff. But what she is finding is that because she was forced into this lane, it opened up her eyes to what else is now possible once we get to the other side, which I think is really it's just one of those things. I'm finding those types of stories a lot with my clients. So with that being said, we are going to end for today. You got 3 tips today on how, if you're thinking, oh, I feel like I dropped in the middle of something and I missed stuff. You did. You missed 4 other things. But specifically the last 2 weeks, we have talked about delegating, what you should be delegating, and then to whom you could delegate to. And now we're in the how phase. So join us again next week. If you have questions, we would love to answer questions. So post them in the comments below. And until then, we'll see you in a week.
Yeah, take care, everybody. Happy delegating.